Hey, we're back for another episode of our live show, Andre.
Hey, Mick, I'm really excited. I mean, I'm still got stage fright, so I honestly believe that that's going to go away in about a year or so.
I got to say, you are looking much better today. You got a nice posh shirt on. You got some beautiful lighting in your studio. Still got the bullet holes in the background. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're working on the green screen for Andre, so that you don't have to look at his construction site in the back there.
Well, that's one of the to-do things, and we'll get there eventually. This is a high budget show, and we spend no money whatsoever.
Okay, so so I'm looking at the count, and we did have some people, and they've kind of dropped off a little bit. So we'll wait a second. I just want to make sure that that people can actually see the broadcast. Yep. We've got people who are finding our way onto the broadcast. So please, put us a comment in the comment section. Let us know that you're there. And for those of you watching on the replay, I know you're very busy, so we hope that you've got a little bit of time over lunch or at some point during the day to listen to us. And one of the things we were just talking about this before we came on air, we got a serious topic that we want to talk to you about today, which is productivity. But we don't want to sound like boring farts and be lecturing. So you're going to let us know if we get too deep. Or
we do sound like boring farts. What do you think? Geez, you just walk right into that.
True. So we try not to take ourselves too seriously. But we're going to be talking about a serious. Hey, we got Luke Canup from DCO watching live for the first time. Good man, Luke. Oh, good to see you here. I love it. So looking forward to today's discussion. And the headline for today's discussion is productivity. Now, very interesting, Andre. You and I have been working together for quite some time, but for the first, maybe 15, 18 years, I was over here in the US. I was, helping large Fortune 500 companies drive improvement. And every time I went into one of these, companies, it was, they were always talking about productivity. They were obsessed with productivity. And the reason was it was a measure of how effective the business was. It enabled them to calibrate their improvement programs and where opportunity existed within the business. And we've been around a lot of flooring companies, Andre. Do you hear the word productivity a lot?
Actually, that's a strange thing. I don't. You don't really see it much on scorecards. You don't really see. It's just it's sort of. Maybe it's not important. I don't know. But we had to have a topic to talk about, so we might as well talk about.
So we've picked a topic that nobody's interested in. Perfect. Susan Hoblit, thanks. Good morning to you. It's very early for you over there in Arizona. So good to see you on there. But so. The reason we're going to be talking about productivity is it's a way for you to help you identify improvement in your business, identify where you're not perhaps making improvement, and establishing a trend over time. It allows you to see the things that you're doing. Are you getting better as a business? That's all that we're talking about. Because you can't stand still, because there always are headwinds. And ladies and gentlemen, big announcement. Andre has prepared a slide for us today, and I don't know what design school he went to, but I'm gonna allow him to.
No, but Big. Look, people haven't even allowed people to damn look at the slide, right? Okay.
No, I wanted to build it.
I really spent a lot of time doing this, right? So anyway. At least hopefully you're making the expectation.
Yeah, this is the big reveal, right? So
but before we even think about the slide, why productivity? Why is it sort of, why is it important? Or why could it be important? important. Maybe it's not important, but why could it be important? Is really the question. And I mean, after a sleepless night, I thought that this would be a beautiful way to explain the why. I mean, we've got to always have a little bit about the why, don't we?
We do. I was getting ahead of myself, Andre. I went off script,
I know. The whole ability for us we got to get a script at some point. Okay, that's.
So tell us why the why of productivity here.
Well, I mean, Mick, here's the thing, so when was it last week? I mean, I even forget. We spoke a little bit about backlogs being down, right? So and this is fairly resonating around many people that we're speaking to right now. Let's call it the 20% backlog hole that everybody's having. So, at the end of the day, two things are going to sort of manifest itself, right? Number one, we're either going to get this backlog to repair itself. And the reality is that when that backlog repairs itself, that's going to happen and help us for 2022. It ain't going to do much for 21, right? Okay.
Right.
So right now, if our backlog is right down, if we started this year with a 20% backlog decline, I can tell you right now, we're looking at some serious, let's call it installed or earned revenue. Hey, there's a definition thing. But whatever definition you want to use, but the actual revenue that we put into the income statement is going to have it's going to have a nice little fat ding to it. All right. And okay, yeah, I know where people are coming from. Well, we've got PPP number 2, and actually, I tell you what, talking about PPP number 2, Mick, we've got to get people into the PPP business. If we could have PPP number 3 and PPP number 4 and PPP number 5, I mean, we might as well just really become PPP experts.
I think we should lobby our congressman, Andre.
There you are. Okay, so bring in more PPP, guys. This is a fantastic way to help our backlog problem. But anyway, so we know that there is going to be a hole in our revenue, right? So and at some point, people have to be going to say, well, okay, I've got all this PPP money, and here's the problem with the PPP. Okay, now, what is the topic of today?
It was productivity, but we're in PPP.
Okay, right.
It begins with P. I like it.
Okay, there you are. You see now we get it.
Right.
Perfect. But here's the problem with the whole idea of productivity and PPP. PPP is the worst enemy of productivity, because what have people done, right? They've just kept everybody. So they've kept everybody employed, okay? And if you really think about it, how many times have we heard, hey, Mick, we should, so-and-so is not, really performing, and this is not really working well, but, we got the PPP money. Right. So problem solved, You know what I mean? Whereas under any other condition, boy, we would be all over it like white on rice. We would be focusing on heavily on these improvement efforts. If people aren't doing the right thing by our business, they wouldn't be part of our business. I mean, it's just I know it sounds brutal, but it's a reality, right? And if costs aren't working for us, we get rid of the cost, because we need to ensure that we are still in business for the next year or whatever the case may be. So this whole PPP business, I think, has made us very inefficient.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if our workload ultimately is 20% down and we've got the same resources, that's a 20% productivity hike. I know it's kind of time delayed, but we get a lot of questions from people. Okay, I'm hunkered down. I know 21's going to be tough, but we're not going out of business. And they're asking the question, well, what do we need to look like in 2022? And I think actually having some metrics to determine which parts of our business are highly effective and which parts are less effective gives us some time this year to focus on those things, to bring those things, up to standard. So we're not advocates of blind cost cutting. We don't want you to shrink your way to success, but we do want you to identify what things are working well and reinforce those, and what things are not working so well or are less efficient, and address address those things now?
Right. So if there is spare time, especially, and this is really something that management needs to think about, hey, Mick, if there's spare time right out there, this is the time really, guys, to get yourself in a way that you are operating at the very best capability, right? Specifically when it comes to, let's say, the way we execute, around being able to create our revenue and deliver on that revenue. Because, that's a big bulk of our cost structure, isn't it?
Right.
How we acquire revenue and then convert that revenue and then ultimately turn it into, I got a new thing here, Mick. Look, watch. This is so cool. Watch. Have you seen this? That's what we want at the end of the
money.
Day.
Follow the money.
And
the money.
Beautiful.
All right. Okay. So we've set the scene around the importance of productivity and focus. Can I reveal your design flair now?
Okay, so now we're getting, you see now this is how you build climax, right? Okay, and Mick, I got a story to tell you. My background is obviously I was an accountant, right? Now, you look at the way that people go to school these days, right?
Really?
They've got to get,
because you have a lot more personality than the average accountant.
Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to discuss here. When in my day, which is like 100 years ago, the way that they assessed how you could become an accountant is they gave you, had nothing to do with your grades. Fortunately, that was for me. It was all based on a personality test. And if your personality was -10 or worse, you were prime candidates for, the accounting school. So obviously I passed the personality test at about -50. So, I was like the top of class. Where are we going to? Anyway, so let's talk about the why. And really, we want to reveal this. This is significant, right?
Okay. You ready now? Drum roll for the slide.
I'm ready.
Here it is. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen.
That is, that is absolutely amazing. Now, guys, we're talking a little bit about this, and guys, okay, I get it. There's going to be a little bit of political undertone, and so what, get over it. You know what I mean? But if you think about what's happened in recent times, right? Okay, and things have changed. There's no doubt about it. The short term way that we're going to experience cost has changed. There's no doubt. The cost of doing business will be greater. So, guys, think about this. We're going into a phase where we have a slightly lower, backlog, and we potentially might be going into a headwind of greater cost increase. Okay, just natural. Now, if you see what's happened recently, right, there's this very important pillar right in the middle of our diagram, and that is January 2021. So obviously we've got to think about what happened before and what's happened after January 2021. Well, there's some great things that have happened that I can really talk about. I think, first of all, the impeachment index. Man, I tell you what, before January 21, impeachment was they even impeached my dog. It was amazing. In fact, Mick, let me tell you about the impeachment index. People were calling their children impeachment. It was the most popular name that you could find of newborn children. Unbelievable. Sometimes a double barrel. Impeach and mint was the barrel thing. So the impeachment index was incredibly high in the previous to January 21, and due to great engineering, they brought this impeachment index down dramatically. So hopefully, because of this impeachment index, everything else is going to improve. Well, has that really happened? Guys, look at gas prices. Okay, you think about it. 6 months ago, what were you paying for? Okay, well, you drive the bloody Mercedes Benz that hardly uses gas. Hey guys, listen here. I drive a truck, and Mick, let me tell you about the guys that drive. Real men drive trucks, right?
Andre, it's a function of my background. When we're in the UK, gas is taxed so highly that when I came over here, this was 24 years ago. I went to the car dealership to buy a car, and the guy was telling me how big the engine was and all this stuff. And I said, well, what's the mileage like? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, how many miles per gallon? He didn't know, because back then he didn't care. Gas was so cheap. So I've always been a bit miserly on the old gas front. So I'm with you, but it was what it was 150, a year ago, and it was like it's 270 now. It's great.
Right. Mate, no, more seriously, I mean, at some point that's going to impact. Okay, it's different. And then the next thing that's going to impact us, guys, I mean, it's just a reality, is, we are going to go through a period of time where taxes are going to increase. I mean, we're going to be taxed higher. Those are two real known facts. It's going to happen. So the consequence is we're going to go through a period of time where cost will increase. It's done. If you think about it, one of the ways that we can start dealing with this problem is, with productivity. Because, guys, what happens is when we do have lower revenue, I mean, it's just natural. Management looks at the cost of stuff, and they try and figure out, they're always looking for this mythical, magical formula. How do we reduce cost? I mean, how many times have you heard that word? How do we reduce cost? Now they can't figure it out. So they come to us and they say, how do we reduce cost? And then we tell them, no, you don't. Right. Okay. So the reality is that, yes, we've got to look at cost from a productivity perspective. So there's always, Mick, in every business, there's always a degree of spare capacity, right? Okay, and how do we start measuring it? How do we start thinking about it? Because when we start measuring something, normally that delivers some degree of inspiration. Okay, well, it could deliver a bit of desperation as well, couldn't it? I mean, it depends on.
We're into aspiration rather than desperation, okay?
I thought we into inspiration. Is it inspiration? Well, it's inspiration of something.
But here's the thing: there's this very clever fellow called Peter Senge. He wrote The Fifth Discipline. It's all about how people learn, etc. But he had this quote: all fundamental learning is driven by aspiration rather than desperation. So, like when you were a kid, right, you wanted to ride a bike, and every time you fell off, you got back on until you learned how to ride it because you wanted to. People don't do something. We always think we're going to wait for some kind of crisis to drive change. But having a good metric to inspire people so that people can learn because they want to improve is a good ethic in your organization. And I know we've got some metrics on the next slide, right, that help us measure. I know we've got an example of two types of business, or even a business with two types of work in it. So let's just pull that up, Andre, and tell us a little bit about these two organizations, both who make the same operating margin, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, really, the whole idea behind this. So once again, guys, we've got another bloody slide. This is supposed to be a slide-free show that has more slides than than the Canadian geese. Have you seen how many Canadian geese there are recently? I mean, it's amazing. But anyway, now you see, there's a nice relationship between slides and Canadian geese. But if you think about it, here's two businesses, as Mick said, they're driving exactly the same profitability. At the end of the day, each business is $30 million, and they're both delivering, let's call it $1.2 million of profit. That standard industry 4% type gig. But really, guys, when we look at our numbers, often, and Mick, tell the audience, what's my favorite saying?
Oh, yes. The one that you stole from Max Planck.
Max Planck stole it from me.
Right. Okay. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Right. Now you go and write to Max Planck and you ask him, where did he get that from? Who's Max Planck anyway?
Oh, he's a famous physicist, quantum physicist.
Okay.
Like, it's not an accounting thing; it's a science degree background thing. So don't even go there.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm convinced if you call him, he'll be very honest.
Have you never heard of Planck's constant?
Pardon me?
Planck's constant. It's a physics term. Anyway, I digress. Come on, talk about the slide here and the difference between Lean Co and Enterprise Co.
Right, guys. So here we have, obviously, and what we're trying to do is just for the purpose of really demonstration is, when we change the way that we look at our numbers sometimes, that helps us really, innovate a little bit and think things differently, right? So, what we got here is, Lean Co essentially is a business that really has a customer base that, essentially allows them to deliver work at a fairly low margin, very low margin, 18%. So this is work that they can still make money out of that 18%, purely because they don't really have a lot of cost to execute and do any of those things. So when Lean Co looks at their numbers, they're saying the total cost of the total cost of doing business is about, let's call it 4.1 million, right? Versus Enterprise Co, whose total cost is 6.2 million to do business. But Enterprise Co has a different customer base. Enterprise Co has an average margin of 27%. All right. Now, look, I know what people are saying. This is not just a customer driven, it's because of a value proposition. I get it. Okay, we get all that. But just for the moment, just to make this easy. All right, so if you think about it, one company has a very, very low margin, still making the same profit, and the other one has a very good margin, yet still making the same profit. So the first thing is, Mick, which of these two companies would you rather own? If I had to say to you, hey, okay, there is two different types of companies, right? But still producing exactly the same profitability. Which one of those would you rather own?
Now you see you've gone off script and you're asking me a question in front of a public audience.
Right.
I'm going to be embarrassed.
So I'm actually asking the public if you had a choice.
I have an answer. Yeah, I'm going to pick Enterprise Co.
Oh, interesting. Hey, yeah, and
because the reason is, I'm thinking because I've a pretty much of when Andre and I partner together, he understands the operational numbers. I'm more in the sales. So as a salesperson, I'm thinking, hey, you know what? I can scale Enterprise Co. Right. Whereas in Lean Co, the only way to get more, business is I really got to bid low, and I've got to do a lot of volume. So I like Enterprise Co.
Right. So if you think about Enterprise Co, for every additional dollar that Enterprise Co delivers, hey Mick, they get a 27 cents contribution. For every additional dollar that Lean Co delivers, they get an 18 cents additional contribution. So, Lean Co nearly has to deliver $2 more revenue to get more or less the same contribution as what Enterprise Co develops. So if
you're a smart fellow, aren't you? Look at that. Did you see that?
Well, it's it's you know where I'm coming from. Okay, get the bloody I was busy. Let me tell you my problem. I was trying to calculate how much the tax increase was going to be. And this is why I'm a little bit sort of flustered today, because my whole computer blew up when I tried to do that calculation. So you've got to understand, these are problem areas we have these days. But if you think about that, the ability for both organizations, even if they both have the same capability to grow, Leanco really can say to themselves, okay, I've got to put a lot more volume in here. And the problem is, the more volume that one organization creates, suddenly the cost structure changes substantially, right?
Right.
So what we're trying to do is to say, okay, it doesn't matter what organization you have, how do we look at the numbers differently in order to get some meaning behind this, right? And Mick, this sort of raises the question around productivity, how we measure productivity. Because when we have a good productivity metric, that at least gives us a baseline. And from that baseline, we can make some good, bad, or indifferent decisions.
Right.
Is that a fair call?
Yeah. No, I think you need a much more finely tuned productivity measure. I think people are more familiar with revenue per employee, but it's a very macro measure. And if you hire a couple of new employees, does that mess up your entire productivity? So we need a more granular metric. And I know that you put some thought into this, Andre, and you've come up with the Selex metric, right?
Aha. Right. So, okay. So we're getting somewhere, guys. I mean, at this point, what we're trying to look at is really what is the value-driven component of your business? And if you think about the value-driven component, it is the way we acquire opportunities, convert opportunities, hey, Mick. I mean, we've got to acquire them, we've got to convert them, right? Okay. And then we've got to administer these things, and then ultimately we got to execute on these opportunities, and then ultimately collect the money. All right. So what's our rule, Mick? When is the job done?
When the cash is in your pocket.
Now you are what a great student. Okay, and it is.
Yeah, baby. Well, yes.
Right. So there you are. Okay.
Right.
So now that we know a job is only completed when the cash is collected, right? So there's this time cycle. So already when you think about productivity, there's this massive time cycle that we got to deal with, right? So what are those costs?
Okay. I got a slide for that. I prepared it for you.
So what are those costs? What are those costs that drive value? Mick, give us a little bit of color and non-accounting personality around this.
So we've come up with a term. We think it's become an industry standard of Selex, which is sell and execution, which includes the cost of your salespeople because they're acquiring the business, including their commissions. They've got sales support staff. We've got estimators who are helping them. There's some logistics costs, installation and project management, and sometimes we'll have some on-site supervision to manage those jobs. That's all involved in sales and execution, and that's our definition of Selex costs, which we isolate and is distinct from our overhead costs. So we're trying to take overhead costs out as one big blob and start looking at what is our sales and execution machinery, what is the productivity of that vital, as Andre said, value creating element of our business. And that allows us then to reconfigure Leanco and Enterprise Co by separating out the Selex costs. And the picture tells a slightly different story, Andre, doesn't it?
Right. So, now, guys, we start getting a feel for, okay, maybe, the cost of supporting our margin. So you can see, of course, in Leanco, the cost of creating that margin is, $1.5 million. Their Selex cost is $1.5 million. On Enterprise Co, it's completely different. Their Selex cost is $4.1 million. So how do we create a metric that is irrespective of your gross margin percentage, right, or your revenue? Because you've got to have a metric that at least gives you a way to create a degree of like-mindedness. All right. And so we believe that your Celex metric needs to be measured based on your gross profit dollars, nothing to do with the percentage. How much cost do you need to support the gross profit dollars in your organization? Because that's what those costs do. Those costs create those gross profit dollars. So the more efficient you are at creating more gross profit dollars, of course, the more the more productive you are.
Right.
That's a bloody tongue-twisting word, productivity. And I mean, by the time you're finished with that, man, you're dead in the water. Okay. So what you're looking for is how effective I can create more gross profit dollars, or at least how effective can I support my existing gross profit dollars. So you see in the one organization, being Leanco, it cost us about 28 cents of our gross profit dollar to acquire, execute, and deliver on a project, right? In Enterprise Co, it's a very different scenario. There it's 51%. Okay, so now what the first thing is, Mick, those on its own, I can't compare Enterprise Co's Celex metric with Leanco.
No, and that's not what we're saying, right? Because they have a different business model.
Very different business model.
Leanco, maybe kill what you eat kind of salespeople, account managers manage it from cradle to grave. And Enterprise Co might have a team-based selling where they've got field staff, they've got their own estimators, and so the salesperson is just selling, and then a little bit of management, but the machinery does all of that. That allows them to convey more value to a complex organization that's looking to work with a company that's got a very dedicated construction team, because that's how they work. So they may be going to market very, very differently. And the other thing is, inside any one business, you might have a lean type of business and you might have a high value adding type of business. So an average metric may not be the right metric if you do have that kind of division of business model within your own organization.
Right. Now, what's very interesting, look at those other overhead costs. Now, in theory, we said Leanco was they're very, very conscious about cost and all the rest of it. In fact, their overhead cost is greater than Enterprise Co. The real lean side. So Enterprise Co has a fairly, you think about it, they are in a far more lean base from a overhead cost position, right? So that's one interesting type thing if you really want to compare stuff. Now, the next thing is, what is happening with your Celex cost over time is the critical element of what you need to look at. If your Celex cost is staying roughly, at 50% or whatever the case may be, that's one thing. If it's declining, you're starting to see signs of productivity improvement. So this is something that you look on, at least on a rolling basis, even 1 or 2 years, or you could go to, 3-month rolling, depending on the nature or what you're wanting to achieve strategically.
Right.
You with me?
Yep, I am.
So that now we have a way to say, okay, that Celex is your value creation cost, and you want that cost to be productive. You want that to generate the maximum amount of gross profit dollars, right? So the Celex metric, we're looking for roundabout rule of thumb, somewhere between 35 and 40%. So if you think about it, around about 35 to 40% of your total gross profit is dedicated to, creating that amount of gross profit. You with me?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, so it's a way of isolating those areas in your business. As Andre said, you can actually go back and look at those trends, right, and start to identify where your Sell-X has changed over time, and you can go back to each of these line items to really understand which of these have you made improvement on, or which have gone in the wrong direction. And that gives you some amazing insight into where you can focus your time and attention to take your business to the next level of performance.
Yeah, and Mick, I mean, there's never any kind of magical thing about anything, but when you do change the way that you look at specifically your costs, and you identify how costs change and how costs behave, you start getting indicators of, I'm maybe a little bit fat, or right. I'm potentially underinvested. And really but really what you're wanting to achieve is you want to get to a place where your investment is delivering the return that you want. Okay. And we'll talk about this later, so we're not going to get into that. But unfortunately, what we do is we mix, the costs for today in order to produce more revenue tomorrow inside that same thing, and that muddies the whole thing up a little bit. But one thing I want to be able to say is, at least now you can say, okay, I have a certain amount of overhead that I have to have for my business. That overhead, you got to try and drive as low as possible. So that's your first objective. Okay. So if you high on your overhead area, if that's trending higher, you're putting your eggs in the wrong basket. There's no doubt about it. All right.
And Andre, the Sell-X metric and other metrics are in our benchmark report, which is at floringbythenumbers.com. Click benchmark if you haven't done already. Packed with insight to help you guide your business. So take a look at that. And what we also did this morning, we'd written a blog on this, a couple of months ago, I think. I reposted that blog on the website. So if you go to floringbythenumbers.com and click on blog, you'll see that article. You'll see the slides that we talked about this morning. If we've gone a little bit too fast and, you couldn't absorb that, that's on there, and that will probably, provoke some additional questions. So going back to our lively audience here, we've got some time left. If there are any questions, we'd appreciate it if there are some. So I'll open up the floor. I have one summary slide which will summarize our show today in a minute, but just wanted to open up for any comments or questions.
And Mick, just before we get to that, just the last thing I want to say is just we do need to start thinking about productivity. And I think just from an industry viewpoint, we need to start talking more about it. We need to become a little more creative around this, right? And to first of all understand, what is good cost and what's bad cost. We want to invest more in the good cost, and we want to reduce the bad cost. The only way we know what bad cost is if we understand whether we're producing or we're not producing. So there is always opportunities to make things more efficient. So first we make it more efficient, then we get to a place where we start reducing, we start removing those inefficient costs. Okay. And then we're in a place, well, okay, now what are we going to do with the surplus capacity? And then that's when the sort of harder decisions start coming in. So that's the whole idea behind this is let's start talking productivity.
Which is exactly what we're talking about in the summary, right? We've got to be talking about productivity. We need metrics to determine, if your business is improving or not, especially as we go through this dislocation in the market where the market dynamics have changed. And we need some more granular metrics. Selex is a good one. It should be in that 30 to 40% range rule of thumb. But more importantly, for you as a business, just trend that over time. So our idea is, look at that Selex trend over the last 3 years, identify those main components that are causing the variability. If it's a positive variation, it's improved Selex, then let's reinforce that. Let's make that a best practice. Let's codify that. Let's make sure everybody does it that way. If it's something that's not working, we need to re-engineer that. We need to get it out of the business and stop doing those things. Hey, good morning, Jim Burns. Good to see you. President of Corporate Floors. What a fantastic company. We love you, Jim. Thanks for joining. I know you got on a little bit late. There will be a replay of what we talked about. The other thing that's the show. That's the show for today. We are very, very keen. If you've got ideas as to the topics that you'd like us to cover, things you'd like us to address, we're here to serve you. We're trying to be not lecturing. We're trying to be entertaining, but providing some education for you. So I hope you enjoyed the show today. Please forward the link to anybody that didn't get a chance to see it. You can see the replay in our YouTube live channel. If you go to Mick Holly, you'll see, YouTube. You click the live channel, and all 3 episodes will be there. Oh, we have a question from Luke. What are some real life examples or ideas for improving efficiency or reducing COGS, Andre?
Oh, well, okay. So I love Luke's, so a couple of real life ways is, number one, have a look at some of the upfront costs. How efficiently do we use our, our estimation or pre-construction, whichever word you want to look. The efficiency of that is a very big component, because that's your upfront cost, that's your forward. And one of the ways that I think we could look at that is, the total value of bids done divided by, let's call it estimation hours. So we have, a value per hour. And if that number is increasing or decreasing, we know roughly, okay, we are good from an estimating viewpoint, right? Then, of course, the next area of cost is obviously our sales cost. Now, that also depends very much on, the commission structure that we have, or the sales compensation structure, and that's a very difficult one to change. So we're not going to talk too much about that now, but then comes the way that we execute, and that is something that I think is usually the area of great improvement. And if for example, how people structure their enterprise in terms of, is it a salesperson with 1 or 2 people that help the execution? So, or is it a pool of people that just execute irrespective of the salespeople? So, and either way, there is potential improvement on that. So we've got to be able to say, how much bucket sitting do we really have? And is that good bucket sitting or not? Because, to me, that's the biggest issue. If we have a degree of spare capacity, how long do we keep that spare capacity before it just becomes just bad cost? So there's got to be, with your productivity, there has to be a capacity metric, and at some point the decision has to be made around that, because that's normally where the big savings are. So hopefully that's a little bit of help for just.
Yeah, I like the one on estimating, because sometimes that resource can be misused, right? Because we're asking the salespeople to go out there and beat the bushes and drive as much business as we can, particularly now I'm sure you're saying, hey, our backlogs are down, and you've got your salespeople, get out there, make the calls, go meet people, flush out those opportunities, make more bids. And you've got to be careful not to fall into just throwing random acts of bidding into a very precious, estimating team who get overwhelmed. And often, sometimes those bids don't always get followed up on. So knowing how many hours per salesperson they consume versus, what they win and the gross profit dollars that they deliver is an important metric. So we need to be judicious about how we use our resources, certainly on the acquisition side.
Yeah, no doubt. And one thing that is guaranteed, the cost of, let's call it estimation, I guarantee everybody is seeing a massive increase. I mean, salaries in that space have grown substantially in the last 3-4 years. And availability of good estimation is, that's something we should talk about, on one of our.
I do think it's a good topic, Andre, because, estimators are really salespeople. They're just not as customer facing, right, as real as traditional salespeople. And I think one of the things we ought to be thinking about is how do we enhance their sales skills, their communication skills, because they're often the front people who are facing off with the customer and can influence whether you win or lose a deal.
And maybe instead of calling them salespeople, I mean, they are a revenue creating unit, aren't they?
Yes.
They are revenue. Like they're a revenue unit. They're not a cost center, and the minute we start looking at them like that, we also start seeing things a little bit differently.
Right.
It's the same as our salespeople. These are revenue creating areas, as is, our operational people. They should be looked at as creating revenue, either through, a whole bunch of things. So, but before we forget about that, guys, remember I nearly forgot about this, Mick. What's the date today?
It's the 31st, isn't it?
Right. So therefore, hey guys, hopefully we got what's the checklist at the end of the month? All right. All our all our invoicing should have been done about a week ago by now. But so definitely all is our invoicing. Have we checked our overbillings and underbillings? Are we clean there? There's no underbillings that unless they are a completed contract that's going to be billed in a week's time. That's about the only underbillings we want. And we've got all those good, end of month checklists in place. Hey? So please make sure that's happening.
And also one of your favorite expressions, every day is a billing day. Billing day, yes.
There you are.
Got to get that cash
every day. Every day. Bill every day, guys.
Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king.
King, baby.
Little cash button there, Andre. Where's the little ring?
No, sorry, there you are.
Okay. All right.
I paid a lot of money for that.
We got to work on the delivery a little bit there. That's kind of surprised you, I think.
Getting there. We're getting there. All right, guys. I think we're good.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for showing up live. As I said, feedback welcome, and we look forward to seeing you next week. You can see the replay, as I mentioned, on YouTube Live, and we're going to see you next week. All right. Goodbye from me.
All the best, guys. Cheers.